What is your top line today?
Westward Woes. President Obama heads out west to a much different political climate than he saw when he was at the Democratic National Convention a year and a half ago. This time he is going to try to save the Senate. He'll be in Colorado working on behalf of Michael Bennet, the embattled incumbent, and then he'll be heading to Nevada to work for Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader. And it is just such a different landscape. We talked for a long time about how the interior West was this land of opportunity for Democrats. Now they are fighting to hold on to the gains that they've made in the past.
No doubt about that. Conservative kickoff. Yes, the CPAC conference, the young conservatives, about 10,000 strong this year, they expect, gathering in Washington at a time where Republicans are feeling more wind at their back than they have in about 5 years. You could sense that energy. I was up there this morning when the former Florida House Speaker and conservative rising star Marco Rubio addressed the crowd, Rick. But of course, you know, today's main event will be when Mitt Romney, a potential 2012 frontrunner there for the nomination, speaks to the crowd later today.
Certainly a happier, more energized crowd than than a year ago when the same group got together. The 2012 cattle call, of course, is the main event. But as you mentioned, Marco Rubio, a darling of this crowd, and was pretty well received this morning from all accounts. Deficit days, as we mentioned, the president formally unveils his own commission, because this is not the law, the legally binding one that would bind Congress on a vote, to deal with the deficit and the debt. This, though, may be the high point for this commission. We'll see what they produce. But as we know, David, there are no easy answers, and no one is seriously expecting this commission to come up with that magic bullet that is going to close a gaping budget deficit.
And in fact, Republicans no doubt want to keep this as a major talking point throughout the rest of this campaign cycle. Close to a deal? Chris Van Hollen, he's one of the members of the Democratic House leadership. He runs the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. He says that the White House, Senate Democrats, and House Democrats are now very, very close to an agreed-upon merged health care bill. And Rick, as you know, the White House wants to put some final version on its website before this bipartisan summit next week at Blair House. But this is exactly the kind of thing that the Republicans are resisting, why they're not so psyched about this bipartisan event, because it's all pre-cooked without them.
Yeah, that's problematic for Democrats. You say, we want your ideas, but here are our ideas. But we should also note, if we had $1 for every time we said Democrats were close on health care, we may actually pay down the deficit.
That is so true, without a doubt. You guys are tuning in to see Senator Norm Coleman, former senator. We're going to be with him in just a moment. We're working out some audio issues. We're going to start with Politico's Eamon Javers. Eamon, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, let's begin with the president's announcement today on the debt commission. There is not a serious person on either side of the aisle, Eamon, who believes that this is not a major structural problem in this country.
Right.
Entitlement spending needs to be reined in, and it is going to require a full pull-in on spending and probably some tax revenue. People of both sides of the aisle admit that in private, but yet dig into their ideological positions in public.
Yeah, right. The other thing is there's not really a serious person in this town who believes that a blue ribbon commission is going to be the answer to this thing. I mean, this town is littered with blue ribbon commissions. That's the traditional Washington tactic when you've got a problem that's too difficult to solve and you want to punt it into the future a little bit. That seems to be what's going on here. But you're right. I mean, the solution to the national deficit is just like the solution to losing weight. It's unpleasant. It doesn't feel good, and you don't want to do it, but you have to. In this case, you got to either raise taxes or lower entitlement benefits, and that means Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid have to be dealt with in a really responsible way in order to produce some kind of fiscal change for this country. But right now it looks like Washington is in one of its non-serious phases in which politicians would rather point the finger at each other and play for short-term political gain than they would in dealing with these really important problems that the United States has.
And Eamon, as you know, if the commission idea, having a bipartisan commission, if that couldn't even pass in Congress, it's hard to imagine any of the ideas getting through. Do you get a sense that there's going to be any kind of Republican buy-in, regardless of just the names of the people that are involved? Yes, we know there's a Republican co-chairman. Any real Republican buy-in from the Hill on this commission?
Well, you know, that's one of the big questions here. I mean, we haven't seen Republicans buy into anything that Barack Obama has done so far this year, any of his major initiatives at all. So why they would suddenly pick this one to, you know, have bipartisan harmony on is beyond me. But controlling the deficit is a key conservative principle, and the conservatives are really worried about the run-up in spending. The problem is you just have an ideological divide here, because conservatives will say, well, we shouldn't be spending all this money right now on the stimulus bill and other things that we're doing to get through the recession. What Obama and his administration say in response to that is, look, you have to spend money right now in the short term to get through this recession. That's what's going to stimulate the economy, and therefore, you know, the national debt in the short term is a national good. So they're arguing for spending. Republicans are arguing against it, although when they were in charge, they were happy to spend when they had the purse strings. So you get this situation where there's just a huge gulf between the Republicans and Democrats on this issue, and whether they can ever bridge that is anybody's guess at this point.
Eamon, I want to turn your attention to the 2010 landscape that's on display today with the president's travel. He is getting on a plane, his plane, Air Force One, and going to Denver, Colorado. Marks the year anniversary of the stimulus bill, where he signed that bill into law, but also where he was at sort of the apex of his career with that convention speech. He goes there to try to protect vulnerable incumbent appointed Senator Bennett, and then on to the really embattled Harry Reid in Nevada in Las Vegas.
Right.
Is he a welcome asset on the campaign trail right now by these Democrats?
He is, or you wouldn't see him traveling. Obviously, the Democrats have said, you know, come on down. We'll be happy to have you. He's a huge media figure. He's a huge sensation among core Democrats. So that means that, you know, he's welcome in a lot of these key races. You know, Harry Reid is sort of hitched at the hip to Barack Obama at this point. There's no way he could, you know, in any way refuse to have Barack Obama there. Obama will probably be an asset to him in his campaign. But the Democrats have suffered a number of embarrassments this year. They had, first of all, the Massachusetts debacle where they lost Ted Kennedy's seat. Now they have the moderate Senator Evan Bayh retiring and saying a pox on both your houses. For Obama to lose Harry Reid, his Senate majority leader, in this election coming up this fall would be an epic disaster politically for the president. So he's doing everything he can to keep that from happening, but he tried it in Massachusetts too and it didn't work.
Eamon, the other big news today in Washington, the CPAC convention, the Conservative Political Action Conference going on right now. And we put the question out to Twitter and asked the question about the Tea Party movement. Should Tea Parties be joining forces with the GOP, or should they try to stay independent of parties? We saw Karl Rove try to answer that question and actually argue for independence today in the Wall Street Journal. One interesting response we got from V.A. Doug, many Tea Partiers are ex-GOPers who got mad over deficits, pork, rhino, that's Republicans in name only, this and that, and now they're heading home. Do you think, is that the upshot for Republicans, or do you think it's a little less clear right now that the Tea Party energy equals conservative grassroots energy for Republicans?
Yeah, I think it's a little less clear right now, because the part of the fun of being in the Tea Party, if that's where you are right now, is that you get to say, you know, to heck with both of these parties. They're not doing us any good. It's a total anti-Washington, anti-establishment, anti-incumbent movement. For them to side suddenly with a political party, you know, professional politicos in Washington inside the Beltway, it sort of just goes against the grain of the whole Tea Party culture, which is to say, you know, throw everything out and start over again. So it's very difficult for them.
Eamon Javers of Politico, thank you very much for joining us today. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.